questions, and I'm going to open it to questions from you. I've given you the link to the Indigenous Unit website, and so you should have some research. Just a reminder to turn on your video when you ask questions, because otherwise it just comes up as a blank sheet and it doesn't look very good on the recording. You won't have a video of you talking to Megan. Ever wanted to use that? Okay, so please don't be shy. You're potential television reporters, so you should jump at the first opportunity to be on air interviewing somebody. Your video when you ask questions, because otherwise it just comes up as a blank sheet and it doesn't look very good on the recording, and you won't have a video of you talking to Megan if you ever wanted to use that. Okay, so please don't be shy. Your potential television reporters, so you to be on the air interviewing somebody. Joined by the senior producer of the CBC News Indigenous Unit, Megan Fiddler from Winnipeg. Welcome, Megan.
Welcome, thank you.
Our class here is a first semester class in reporting, and I'm sure they'd all be interested in getting an overview from you as to the who, what, and how of the Indigenous Unit.
We started the Indigenous Unit in 2016. Back at that time, I was a local reporter, but there was some, Indigenous reporters with CBC that recognized that the stories that were being told to CBC, but amongst wider media, that they weren't reflecting us, and they weren't reflecting our communities, and so. Most of the stories would, include stories of crime and death and poverty and, always being in a deficit. And so we said, there's so much more to us that we need to highlight. And so we pushed for a page that was specifically for Indigenous stories, that highlighted our successes, that talked about the good stories, that talked about the positives and people doing things and achieving things. And so that's kind of how CBC Indigenous came to be. And then it became at first it started out really small and just congregating stories from across the regions. It had 1.5 staff. And then it grew. And so now it's its own unit, and we have reporters from across the country, right from the Atlantic to BC. And we have a working relationship with CBC North, covering all of the northern communities and Inuit communities. So yeah, we have, what is it now? About 6 reporters, and we're looking to grow this country that we don't cover currently, that we think, so there's efforts and a hope and a will to keep doing more stories with more people.
Mm. So you answered what's going to be my second question about why the CBC set this up. I'd like to hear a bit more about the type of stories you do. Are these across all platforms, and are they specific to the website, or do they appear in other parts of the CBC?
Sure, yeah. So we're primarily a digital unit. And you can tell, I hope you can tell that I'm working from home. I'm not working in an office. That's because of the pandemic. So the pandemic, we are working remotely from each other. We've got, a reporter in Montreal, a reporter in the Atlantic that's currently actually open, a reporter in Winnipeg, we have in North Toronto, BC, and in Calgary. So, they're covering any kind of story, community stories, grassroots voices. That's what we're trying to do. We kind of try to leave the press release news to the local regions, because there's a responsibility for the local newsrooms to cover Indigenous news as well. And so we lean on them to cover, kind of the everyday news, but we're, trying to find community voices. But also too, there are some things that we do cover that, is hard news. We sent folks up to protest in BC. We sent people out to Land Back Lane in Ontario. So, Quebec. So, we cover the hard news that some people like. There's things that are just, it's hard to know unless you know the history. It's hard to report on unless you've been connected. And so, and you know the right people to talk to. And so that's something that you do here because of those connections and history. We delve deeper into those stories. We try to give people an in-depth look at something that might be happening. We do. What can we add to this coverage? And so what we looked at is the numbers, because you guys have seen on your socials, but a lot of people are sharing a number. This many people have there's this many unmarked graves. But there was a lot of questions about that because there were so many different numbers. What is the accurate number? What number is it that people should be using? And it's not an easy answer, but we did explain why it's difficult to pinpoint and what sort of factors go into that.
I'm just going to say that Kamloops story, the public reaction to it, I've never seen anything quite like it. I mean, it just hit a chord.
Yeah. I mean, it's a reckoning for the country that this is happening. It was it was the proof, I guess, that everybody was looking for to understand the history of residential schools and what happened. For us in the unit, we're saying it's not just residential